And the question is, what funding would you identify and propose the city to use to fund capital improvement projects in the city? And secondly, how important are these projects?
You know, everything is a funding opportunity. You have sales tax. We've done that through the pool where we had a sales tax initiative. That's about to expire in December. If we dedicate or decide that the best way to fund the $6 million necessary for road improvements through a sales tax initiative, I think we take that back to the voters through the pool. We talked about that just in the last council session. Some of these capital improvements you can't do without funding. You can't do without debt services. So then you have to look at your debt services fund and the impact of what those will have. Our financial team, both from our bond council, just our internal financial teams, they're always very good at providing us what the expected impact is when you take on a bond initiative like we'll have to do with some of the capital improvement projects. So then you have to react to it accordingly. You have to ask the questions necessary to understand it and then make the decision that you think is best. Sometimes it's going to be that it costs a little bit more, but it costs less now than it will cost when you run out of choices. The other piece of that is, bear with it, I just lost my train of thought. But, oh gosh, I got stuck on that. I apologize. It is, yeah. You lose it and you don't need to take notes very quickly. It's easier to come back to your checklist. You know, with 15 seconds left. You just can't leave any rocks unturned. I mean, every piece of it has to be funded. So you have to look at what grants are. You know, the city's actually hiring a grant administrator right now. So you can look at alternate funding mechanisms. You look at what's the fairest form of tax.
I hate to call you, Keith.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. Rich, to you.
Well, I understand that some things are going to have to be financed by debt, although I don't like it. You know, if it's a long-term project or a product that we can sit on, I know that it'll probably have to be done that way because we don't want to use a cash expenditure. Now, I know also, though, that it had Gardner been more open to business, and I'll use this example. I mean, if we don't even have a used car lot in this town. I drive through towns all the time in Kansas. 100 people live in that town and there's a used car lot. Even just that little car lot would generate a little bit of extra revenue for the city. So every little business we can get in here would generate extra revenue to help offset these costs. That's the real simple answer, is a little bit of debt is fine with me, but I think the more businesses we can get here to generate revenue, the better off we're all going to be.
Thank you, Rich. Lee.
I tend to prefer sales tax initiatives a lot of times because they have to go through the voters. We have to go to people and tell them what you're going to get taxed for. And then you have to say, yes, I want to be taxed for that. I prefer that over pretty much any other form of taxation. The funding of capital improvement, I mean, we have to do these things. These are some of these things are long-term investments, and if we don't make them, they'll cost more later. And of course you don't want to spend your cash that you have on hand to fund your long lifespan projects. That just doesn't make any sense when you can finance it and get better better use for your money because of the time value of money. So I think I think primarily in the future we're going to be using a half-cent sales tax for things like the roads and the economic development initiatives.
Thank you, Lee. Randy.
Well, let's start with growth. I think we must understand that there's a return on investment from a growth strategy, and this is a long-term approach. With growth comes that return on investment, which would offset the tax base, which is your sales tax. Now, when you talk about sales tax, I do agree that we need to send that to the voters. We've got a half-cent sales tax that's going to sunset that supported the pool. And there's some opportunities there to bring it back forth in front of the voters. But we need to be really tactical about how we're using that money for these capital improvement programs, and whether a half-cent sales tax is too much or too little. Because again, if you prolong it, it's going to cost you that much more money. And another example would be the CARS program. The state has a program that would match up to 50% in order to put back in the roads. Instead of crack and seal, we'll be able to chip it away 2 or 3 inches and lay down new asphalt. But we have to understand that with that 50% matching program, we still have to understand that we may have to pay for all of it, because that's not a done deal. But we have seen some success with the CARS program. They're at Center Street and 56, and I believe Shirley's pretty happy with that new intersection now.
Thank you, Randy. Brett?
Funding for capital improvement projects. First of all, with the current Gardner budget, the only Gardner's maintenance projects are currently sustainable. So we're going to have to look at additional revenue streams. Other candidates have mentioned referendums from voters. It's necessary for long-term projects. I think some of the top ones, my personal top one, and what I've heard from most people is road improvements and infrastructure. That needs to be number one before something else. Number two would probably be a new justice center to replace our public safety building. Again, both are very important. I think we need to take care of what we have here first. Talking about road improvements isn't very appealing to some people, but it's definitely necessary. I think it also helps spur future economic development, because new businesses aren't going to want to come here if we're literally falling apart. And like I said, new things like the Justice Center, they're long-term projects. They're going to have to be looked at, most likely with the sales tax referendum. I think if it's important to enough people, like the Aquatic Center was, and the Celebration Park and things like that, I think it'll be successful. So I think that's where we need to go.
Thank you, Brett. Tori?
Every project is unique in Gardner, so not every, I can't just pick one funding option. We have to investigate all the options and proceed with the best option and spend wisely. So I like all the ideas that people have said, but I don't have one particular one, because like I said, every project's unique. And I'm going to go back to it again. I'm spending the money that the residents are, it's the taxes. I'm gonna be smart with the money. I'm going to always investigate all the options and pick the best one for the city of Gardner.
Thank you, Tori. Ms. Todd?
Okay. Well, we've been moving to what's called like a priority-based budgeting, and basically, the council set direction on what they want to accomplish, and then we work to fund those projects with money in the budget that we have. And so, there are opportunities coming available. Obviously, we've mentioned the house and sales tax. A TIF will be expiring soon, which will generate a lot of money. There's some savings in other funds that will be expiring as well soon on some debt payment that we've made. So, there's a lot of opportunities there. It's just a matter of where do we want to invest it and what's most important. And I'm in favor of a lot of investment in the infrastructure side, because that is something that, as you complete it, it can help to drive more economic development, which helps to increase the tax base, which helps to decrease the taxes to citizens. So it's kind of a nice cycle that goes on there. I do, as a general sense, though, I do like the sales tax. Not only, well, for one thing, I think that it works well because it has other people help to pay a percentage of that. So anyone coming into Gardner that's using our buying things in Gardner will be paying towards that. I like that idea.
And the question is, share your philosophy on the interaction and the relationship between the city administrator and the public employees and the council.
Well, in a perfect world, I believe the city administrator takes direction from the mayor and the council, and then basically sends out, it's no different than the, how we do things in the business world. I mean, there's the CEO and all the people underneath them, and they just pass down the information and things are handled appropriately. If, things aren't done correctly, then people are replaced. So I think that's a pretty simple thing. I look at it from a business perspective as a former, boss. I was in the middle management in America, and I had people above me who told me what to do, and then I went ahead and said, hey, this is delegated, this is your job, you will do this. I think that is the simplest way to make it happen, because it works. You see it work every day in America.
Thank you, Rich. Lee?
I think the relationship between the city admin and the city council should obviously, or the governing body should obviously be that the city admin takes direction from the governing body. However, at that point, the city administrator becomes a leader, or should be. And by being a leader rather than a manager, what I'm talking about is she needs to empower, or he needs to empower the people beneath them to do the jobs that they're hired to do. We have directors in place. We hire them as directors. They're executive level managers, and they should be trusted with the duties that they're charged with. So that's where I guess I probably differ a little bit.
Thank you, Lee. Randy.
Well, I've got a lot of silly sayings, and I'm going to use one of them tonight. I think we need to focus on the what and not the who. And what I mean by that is we need to not focus on Cheryl as a city administrator. We need to focus on the position that Cheryl holds. And with that being said, we need to make sure that there's mechanisms in place, whether it be at the director level or a brand new lineman that works for for Gardner Energy, and make sure that she's a part of that hiring process, so that we can create those relationships both at a high level and a low level. When it comes to city administrator and the council, we've definitely got to partner and hold accountable those metrics that we hired her against and those objectives that we hired her against. We must hold her accountable and understand what that looks like if she's not performing, and then give her an opportunity to right the ship. If not, then we'll need to make that decision as a council.
Thank you, Randy. Brett.
As far as the role that a city administrator plays between the city public employees and the city council, I think roughly right in the middle. Not necessarily as a mediator, but I think the city administrator obviously is there to listen to council, to reply back to them what she hears them saying, and then she can go back and delegate and work with the city employees to help implement some of the decisions and policies that the council has made. Conversely, I think it can go the other direction as well. After working with the public city employees, she can then come back to council and say, here's some information that we have for you, and they can work through their policies going forward.
Thank you, Brett. Tori.
The relationship between the city council and the city administrator needs to be respectful. However, the city administrator does take direction from the city council and then delegates to the departments. The city administrator runs the day-to-day, but the city council sets the policy. So in turn, the city administrator then is going to enforce and take the steps to get the policy that we set going. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Tori. Todd.
Yeah, I agree. The city administrator is, she takes direction, or he takes direction from the council and communicates that to the employees. But ultimately, that position is responsible for the performance of those employees. And so, that position would be who directly reports to us and who we directly report to. And so hopefully it's a good working relationship, and I would expect the city administrator to be a liaison between the council and the employees.
Thank you, Todd. Heath.
When you go first, you lose your thoughts, and then when you go last, you get your thunderstorm. I'll try to just share a couple other things. I try to describe the relationship pretty simply. As a council member, I work for you, and as a city administrator, she works for us. And the council's job is actually to provide direction and build a policy that then gets implemented within the city and within City Hall. The city administrator's job is to be the leader. They're steering the ship on a day-to-day basis. So you have to have trust in the leadership skills within that position. You have to have trust in the implementation and the execution of what your plans are going to be. But again, I work for you, she works for us, and we have to set the expectation levels appropriately and expect the kind of returns that we deserve for the investment that we make in that position and within the city. That's how I define the relationship.
The question is, what are your top 3 agenda items if you are elected? Lee?
I get to go first again. My top 3 agenda items, I guess my first agenda item is if I'm elected, is to get a lay of the land, so to speak, on the council. I don't know, at this point, I don't know who's going to be on the council. I'm going to need to know who I'm working with and figure out what I'm going to need to do to work with them. So that's got to be number 1, because I'm not going to stand up here and tell you I've got a multi-point plan that I'm going to implement. I'm not running for President of the United States of Gardner. I'm running for 1 seat out of 5, obviously 3 available. So I just want to work with whoever the rest of the governing body is. So that's number 1. I guess number 2 is to move Gardner forward, to get the past behind us, and to rebuild relationships. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Lee. Randy.
Well, while I was going door to door, I've actually heard this question door to door, and it's pretty simple for us. It's continue to build the relationships that we have, continue to find new relationships that we don't have that we need to build, continue to have relationships with our police department and provide a safe community. Again, make sure that we're good fiscal stewards of our budgets, and then align our community for future development and make sure that it's both strategic and tactical. Now, in the meantime, you do need to understand who's on council with you, and you do need to understand how you can build that relationship with the gentleman or the man that's sitting next to me. And push through that and understand that at the end of the day, and remembering that this is a bipartisan election, but at the end of the day, we're all neighbors, and we all live in this community. So we've got to rally, find a common ground, and push forward.
Thank you, Randy. Brett.
My top 3 agenda items basically align with the priorities I've been focusing on during my campaign. So this isn't something I really have to think about. It's something I know about. My number 1 priority would be to maintain and invest in our city assets. That includes our infrastructure. That includes our employees. I think that has to be number 1. Not only budget-wise, just how the city is run. I think that's definitely a top priority. Another agenda item / priority would be to continue to facilitate economic development. We all want more business here. We all want additional opportunities to come to us. Do that while we maintain fiscal stewardship. That has to be important. We can't just tax and tax to get more and more. And the final agenda priority that I would have would be continued support initiatives that improve quality of life for residents. Be that improving biking trails, walking trails, other things like that. Anything that improves the quality of life and time spent there.
Thank you, Brett. Tori.
Well, I feel like I kind of have a unique advantage. I didn't just start campaigning in January and knock on a few doors or however many doors and get some opinions just this a little window of time. I am out in the community, weekends, nights, I'm in many clubs. I hear people's concerns, and I value their concerns. And I mentioned it in my opening statements. The 3 things that I've heard the most is we need to diversify our tax base with maximum growth, with well-suited developments. We need to focus on our infrastructure, new and existing, and encourage more volunteerism. It's a great community, and I just want everybody to know about it, so volunteer.
Thank you, Tori. Todd.
Yeah, I have more than 3, so I'll just kind of narrow down my top 3. But first thing is improving and maintaining the infrastructure that we have, and that includes our expansion across I-35. Whatever we need to do to facilitate that, I think that's our next growth area, and we definitely need to focus on that. Stabilizing utility rates. I hear a lot of people complaining about utility rates going up. So focusing on that while still building infrastructure, while still improving it, but yet keeping those rates down. And then lastly is preparing for the completion of a new Justice Center. It's just, Rich has mentioned, it's not acceptable the way it is. Beyond that, just the Justice Center, there's other things that need to be improved, the automobiles, the cars, equipment, etc. So that's kind of our next big thing I think we need to look at, and those are probably my top 3 items right now.
Thank you, Todd. Keith.
From the city's perspective, I share a lot of things Todd and some of the others have said, so I kind of wanted to look at this as just the personal agenda items that would happen in the next term. The first thing is just to continue to work hard and just be dedicated to the role and be the type of councilman I think that the citizens deserve. I think we have to understand the power of compromise, and we have to make sure that we understand the power of working cohesively as a unit. If we can't work together, we're going to stand in our own way, so it's important that we continue to do that. we have to make sure that we promote the city as a great place. You know, Tori used the term earlier, I've used it before, to live, work, and play. People want to live here. We need to make sure that we promote that same perception. They want to work here. We need to let people know that this is a place they should want to work and businesses should want to develop. And then, of course, play. There's already a lot of opportunities there, but we'll always be improving that. And then finally, just from a personal perspective, I'll continue to push for finalizing our eco development programs, but then also improving our asset management programs, because I think they're critical to our future.
Thank you, Heath. Rich.
Well, I kind of like what Lee said. One of the things about when you first get on here, we're going to find out who's on the council to work with. But one of the things I'd like to do is, right away, I think the council and the mayor need to get together and have a set of goals. Now, I know we have the economic development plan and all that, but I think we need hard and fast goals and dates. We want to do these by this time. That's what I do in my business, and that helps me succeed because I have something to judge myself by. And right now, that would be an easy way to say, look, we're going to try and we're going to make this happen. I understand not all things happen exactly that way, but I think that's an easy way for the citizens to judge how well we're doing up there behind the, during the meetings. The second thing would be, I think that the utilities definitely need some help. I think they need help with employees. And then third and final would be just changing that, our basically perception in the community and trying to get businesses to come here.
And now we're going to give each of them 90 seconds for a closing statement. And Heath, you're going to love this because we're going to start with you.
You know, I'd just like to close. My wife and I, we didn't move to Gardner by chance. We moved here by choice. This is where we decided to plant our roots. I used the gambling term earlier, but we're pot vested. We love this town, and we're devoted to what the future's going to bring. I'm excited about what we're going to see in Gardner just over the next 3 years, but even when I think about Gardner in 10 to 15 as the population approaches 26, 20,000 people, we're going to see a lot of exciting things that even now we may not imagine. So I hope to be a big part of that over the next 4 years and continue some of the momentum that we've already built. You know, the most important thing I'd like people to take away, we can no longer be reactive in the way that we approach economic development, asset management, and even capital improvement. We've made some advancements there, but it's very easy to lose that momentum if we don't keep fighting that fight. So I hope that we can continue that regardless if I'm part of that, which I certainly hope to be, but whoever's on there, they can't stop. This isn't the time to stop or you'll lose what little ground we've gained. You know, the final thing I'd like to say is just, as a council member, you know, I mentioned it before, but it's exactly what I believe in. I've proven myself to be accessible, accountable, and agenda-free. I wanted to be the type of councilman that I thought the citizens deserved when I was sitting on the outside. It's what I hoped to have gotten from a councilman, and that's what I've used to provide the direction I need as I move forward. You know, I've worked hard to earn the trust of the citizens, and I hope for the opportunity to earn your vote on April 7th.
Thank you, Heath. Todd, it's your turn.
Okay, well, you know, despite what you may hear, you may read, I believe Gardner's in a really fantastic position right now. Since I've been appointed in November, I've witnessed a positive, committed, open dialogue on the city council that I haven't really seen in a long time. We don't agree on all issues, but we'll thoughtfully and critically discuss what we feel is best for Gardner. We developed a comprehensive plan, an economic development plan, which will now guide us towards positive growth. We're in the process of redoing our land development codes, which will streamline the administrative, regulatory, and permitting processes. All these things are designed to create a business-friendly environment. We've clearly defined a plan to maintain our roads with our new pavement management system. Our park system continues to impress, and participation is at an all-time high. Our utilities will soon be under one director and one board, which will help stabilize the rates. Park sales tax and Walmart TIF will soon expire, providing additional potential sources of income. And we're a growing city with a large residential tax base, but they just came out with the 2004 mill levy study, or rates for all the towns, and out of 98 cities of the second class, which were considered second class city in Kansas, only 5 cities had lower mill rates than we do. So I think we've done a pretty good job at this point. I'm committed to bring experience and dedication to ensure this process continues, and I humbly ask for your vote on April 7th. And one last thing, April 7th is my birthday. So if you need to give me something, that would be great.
Thank you, Todd. Tori.
Your presence and participation this evening has shown that you are as interested and concerned about the future of Gardner just as I am. Just as I have pride in our city, I hope my enthusiasm will reach other Gardner residents so their interest in Gardner will also grow. A vote for me will bring a committed, interested, enthusiastic, responsible Gardner City Council member. After all, we all want what is best for Gardner, and a vote for me on April 7th will allow me to be your voice to make that happen. Any questions, concerns, don't hesitate to contact me, as I welcome your thoughts and ideas. I'm a listener and a doer. I am a citizen, not a politician. I will be your voice on City Council, and I need your support for victory on April 7th. Thanks.
Thank you, Tori. Brett.
Thank you for your questions this evening and for taking the time to listen to all the candidates. To reiterate my campaign priorities, I focused during my campaign are maintaining and investing in city assets, both infrastructure and employees, facilitating economic development while retaining fiscal stewardship, continuing support of initiatives that improve quality of life for Gardner residents. I'm not a candidate with a personal agenda that fuels my campaign. I'm not an emotional decision maker. I'm a critical thinker. I use logic and reason when working through issues. I've chosen to align my campaign not with what I personally want, but with what concerns most residents and what I've heard them tell me. My campaign strategy has been primarily just to share the message of what my ideas and priorities are, and hopefully that will resonate with most people. The local elections for City Council are three positions available, as you know. I invite you to research information about me and the other 6 candidates. Read about what's important to each person, compare and contrast who supports what, and see what message is being delivered by each candidate. I'm confident I can be one of your 3 choices for Gardner City Council on April 7th.
Thank you, Brett. Randy.
Well, first, I think I probably need to thank Randy for moderating, Jason with the Chamber of Commerce for putting this together, and my insurance agent, Tim, for dinging us with the time. But I also want to thank my wife for supporting me while I'm out door to door and meeting with folks in Johnson County and commercial developers and sheriffs and so forth, because those relationships are important to understand what their perspective is. As a former city council member, I was appointed a couple of years ago as a former EUB member, as an active Knights of Columbus member, as an Eagle Scout and active participant in a local Boy Scout troop, and recently the only candidate endorsed by Kansas for Life. I'm excited to be in front of you and to earn your vote on April 7th. At the end of the day, I have a simple platform: public safety, fiscal stability, and future growth. And that's in an order for a reason. We have to keep our communities safe. We have to be good stewards of the dollars that we all pay. And we have to bring future development at the end of the day, while taking care of the existing leaders and business leaders in Gardner. I too would hope that you would go to our website and investigate and understand and ask questions, because we relish in the opportunity, and thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Randy. Lee.
I'd like to thank everybody also. I won't go through the whole list. It's a big list. The way I see it, Gardner is we're at a crossroads. We can either continue down this path of reacting to competing municipalities and uncontrollable economic conditions, or we can elect a council that will look beyond the horizon, be proactive, decisive, and driven to achieve results. Proactively managing the inevitable growth coming to our region is absolutely essential to Gardner's future. But before we can do that, we're going to have to get our house in order. Before we can implement any of our plans or our 3-point agendas or whatever, I believe we have to make a commitment to becoming better and more desirable employer. The people who operate and maintain our city are very much like the foundation of a building. Weakness in the foundation compromises the entire structure. We have some shoring up to do to stabilize, reinforce, and strengthen our foundation. I believe we need to start at the top and reintroduce the principle of holding people accountable for their actions. I have heard it said that a good leader creates more leaders, not more followers. That's the kind of leader I personally aspire to be, and that is the kind of leadership that I expect of the people I choose to follow. And I ask you for your vote on April 7th.
Rich.
I'd like to also thank everybody for coming out this evening. I know it takes time away from family and everything, but truly inspiring to see so many people here. I'd love to see you guys all at a council meeting in the future too, so just FYI. Really, for me, I grew up in Lawrence. I moved to Gardner, about 13 years ago, and what I see happening is, from my deck, I can stand on it, I can see the cranes of the intermodal. And I'm upset every time I see that. I'm like, there is money we are not getting. And my biggest fear is that on my deck you can see I-35 from it too, and so I am definitely worried that if we don't act, and act quickly, what's going to happen is I'm going to sit there and look at some other property that someone else is generating revenue off of and not Gardner. And I just can't stand that. And the thought of that is upsetting, because what will happen is Olathe, Edgerton, somebody's going to annex it and build on it, and we won't get to decide what's going over there. So if you don't want giant commercial buildings and everything else, that's the easiest way to make that happen by, looking at the folks that are up here. 4 people have already been on council that are up for election. And look at their record and what they've done previously and make your decision on April 7th. That's the easiest thing I can tell you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rich. And thank you all for being here tonight. Thank our panel, our candidates. Let's give them a round of applause.